This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 67 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, I am going to share 30 incredible ideas for things you can do in your classroom on those after testing, day before vacation, lame duck days of school. So excited about this episode. Oh my goodness. It just started as this little idea, and now the more research I've been doing for it, the more excited I am. So let me get started. The term lame duck is most often used to describe a president who is still sitting in office after his or her successor has been elected. Technically, this person is still the president, but his or her decision-making power is generally perceived to be minimal. We have something like that in school. Those days when technically we're still in school, but because it's right before vacation, the end of the school year is near, or we're in the middle of standardized testing, those class hours don't have the same instructional potential as your average school day. In some cases, like on standardized test days in certain districts, teachers are explicitly told they can't plan regular instruction. On these lame duck days, it's hard to figure out what we can do to still provide valuable learning experiences for our students. And then there are those small bursts of lame duck time, the 15 minutes you have left after the fire drill when you know you don't have enough time to actually finish the lesson you were teaching, but you don't want to just let them sit there. We often call the activities we need for these times sponge activities. Regardless of what you call it or how much you need, we all have those times when students are right in front of us, but the regularly scheduled programming just isn't going to work. What then? In some schools, they'll still let you show movies. I worked in a place like that, although near the end, we were starting to get pressured to cut that out. And I understand why. As a parent, when I ask my kids what they did in school on any given day, and I hear, watched a movie, I'm annoyed. I mean, I can show my kids a movie at home. Seriously. Surely school can step it up a notch. What's worse, show a movie in some classes actually means put a movie on, but let students do whatever they want while the movie provides background noise. And when the movie is, say, The Sound of Music or some other classic I have waited years for just the right time to experience with my own kids, and then they tell me their music teacher put it on 7 or 8 times during the school year, I definitely feel robbed as a parent. Okay, that's my rant about showing movies in class. Please take it with a grain of salt because A, I totally showed movies when I needed a day to grade papers and get caught up, and B, I know there are a ton of absolutely amazing movies, video clips, and documentaries out there that are jam-packed with educational value. So I get that it's not the worst thing you can do and that there are lots of ways to do it right. This is why I would never support a school banning the showing of videos across the board. That kind of blunt policy does not respect teachers' ability to make the best instructional choices for students. However, when it comes time to plan for lame duck days, we really do have so many more options beyond the showing of videos. So if you've decided you want to do something else, or you've been told you flat out have to, I'm going to share with you 30 really, really good ideas for the final days of school before break, after testing, or even just a 10-minute bit of time when you need a sponge activity. Some of these ideas come from my own teaching experience, others come from online resources, and a lot of them came from a Facebook Live broadcast I did a few weeks ago where other teachers supplied their own ideas. Before we get started, I'm going to take a moment to tell you about my brand new technology course for teachers called Jumpstart. This hands-on course has been designed especially for teachers who want to get better at using technology in the classroom. I've chosen the 10 skills I think will give you the biggest bang for your buck. 10 highly flexible, versatile tech skills that, if you learn them, you'll not only have a powerful toolbox for boosting learning in your classroom, you'll also gain a ton of confidence in your own ability to grow beyond those skills. Each module focuses on a different skill with a hands-on project you do. So you learn the skill and a tech tool that puts the skill into practice. One of these modules is mind mapping, where we explore some of the ways mind mapping can help make learning visual and tap into the way learning is boosted when information is coded through linguistic and non-linguistic channels. Then you'll use a mind mapping tool called Sketchboard to create your own map. In other modules, you'll practice using a digital curation tool, creating a flipped lesson, using a digital assessment tool, using an online collaboration platform, and recording your own screencast video. The course starts accepting students in early May. It's a completely online course that you can take at your own pace. You don't have to show up anywhere. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas. To learn more about the course and see if it's ready, visit teachersguidetotech.com/jumpstart. I would also like to thank you so much for the reviews that you've left for this podcast on iTunes. It is still so surreal for me to read these and hear the thoughts of people who spend hours listening to my voice. And I'm so grateful to know that you're getting a lot of value from these episodes. If you've been a listener but haven't left a review yet, I would really appreciate it if you would. Every review brings more listeners over to the show and it increases the podcast visibility. So head over to iTunes and tell me what you think. Okay, let's dig into this list of 30 things you can do on lame duck school days. I have broken this list into 3 sections based on how much prep you would need to do for each one and how much time each one would take. So the first section is the low prep sort of short-term activities. These are things that you could do very spontaneously without needing a lot of supplies or equipment or preparation. Number 1 is cleanup day. Give students a chance to clean out their binders or lockers and get them to help you tidy the classroom as well. Everybody benefits from doing a little bit of cleaning up, and it's a great way to use a little bit of time productively. Number 2, learn a line dance. Either you teach your students, they teach each other, or you all learn together from YouTube. What's great about line dancing is that anyone can do it, whether they have rhythm or not. You could go back a few years and learn the Cupid Shuffle. You could go a little further back and practice the Macarena, or you could go way back and everybody learns the Hustle. At the end of this time period, the students could either have watched a movie or they now have something they can do at a wedding. Number 3 is thank you notes. Since this important life skill isn't really part of any curriculum, a lame duck day is a perfect time to have students practice it and show some gratitude to the people who deserve it. Provide them with paper and envelopes and have them write thank you notes to friends or family members, school staff members, or even to other students. If you want to get the best results, show them a few examples of really thoughtfully written notes ahead of time so they have sort of a model to work from. Number 4 is the Compliments Project. I don't know if you've seen this video, but there is a link to it in the blog post for this episode. This is an incredible activity that a teacher shared with me that she does with her students. Students take turns sitting in the hot seat, which is just a seat in front of the classroom. And while they sit in this seat, they are facing away from the board toward the other students. So while they sit there, their classmates come up to the board and write compliments about them on the board behind them. And only after all of their classmates are done writing are they allowed to stand up, turn around, and see all of the things that were written about them. You have to see it to really appreciate its full impact. So go to cultivepedagogy.com/pod, click on episode 67, and there will be a link there to the Compliments Project video. Doing this activity only takes 5 to 10 minutes per student, which means that it would be something you could squeeze into the end of a class period, but only get the whole thing started if you know you'll eventually have time to get to every student over the course of time. So even though the Compliments Project is being listed as short-term and no prep, you still would need to make sure you have multiple days to actually get it done so no one's left out of this incredible experience. The magic of editing. What you don't know is that in between every single one of these, I'm stopping to cough and clear my throat. And then I get to go back in and edit it all out. So you're welcome for not having to listen to that. Number 5 is go outside. Many of the activities listed here could also be done outside. Or you could just teach your students how to play, or maybe they could teach you, but I'm thinking it's 2017. You might need to teach it to them. Have them play a classic outdoors game like Red Rover or Red Light, Green Light. In the post, I've linked you to an article from Wired Magazine, of all places, that lists a whole bunch of just sort of classic outdoor games. So that would be another thing that you could do with your students for that time. Idea number 6 is play charades. Teach kids the basic rules of charades and then just have them take turns giving clues and guessing clues. So many of the activities on these lists have the benefit of just loosening kids up. And I'm sure that a lot of you are thinking, my students don't need to loosen up. They do that all the time. But in some cases, and for certain students, I've talked before about the fisheye tendency, where we see our students the way we see our most, extroverted and attention-seeking students. And if you look more closely at the entire group, there are quite a few who aren't doing the same things that your most attention-getting students are. And so games like charades or even, games like Red Light, Green Light, these activities can bring out aspects of the kids' personalities that you don't really get to see. I have a teacher that I interviewed recently. I think it was Dina Simmons, and she talked about one of the ways she gets to know her students is to go to PE with them sometimes and just participate in PE, and that you really get to know a different side of their personality. And a lot of the activities listed here in this episode are like that. So charades is another one. Super easy because the kid doesn't have to really think of anything. And what I've linked to in the post is actually a really cool thing I found online that's a charades word generator. And you just select the game that you're playing, and then it will just keep bringing up words that you can use to act out. So you could have this set up at your desk, and if the student, sees a word and doesn't think that's going to be a good one for him, he can just click and choose another one, click and choose another until he gets to one that he thinks he can act out. That's a problem for my own kids in charades. Sometimes they'll get to a clue and they're like, I don't even know what this thing is. So they can just flip through until they find something. Number 7 is a philosophical chairs debate. This technique has a lot of different names. I've seen it called Four Corners, Physical Barometer. I personally called it This or That in my icebreakers. I've got a post called Icebreakers That Rock, and This or That is one of them. But the idea for all of these is basically the same. You, as the leader, read some sort of a statement to the class, like, students should be allowed to go barefoot in school. And you designate one side of the classroom as the agree side and the other as the disagree side. And when you read the statement, students have to physically walk to whichever side of the room best represents their opinion. Then you have them take turns explaining why they are where they are. So this is just, I used to do this type of activity all the time, and I actually turned it into an icebreaker. If you wanted something that was pre-made, I've got something in my Teachers Pay Teacher store called This or That it's a 20 slide PowerPoint that's got just really good questions that will get kids debating like crazy. And there's a link to that in this post. Number 8 is a group story or progressive writing. This is another one of those things that has a lot of different names. But the idea is that you have every student take out a sheet of paper and then have them all write the first sentence or 2 or 3 of a story. Then have each student pass their paper to the right, and then they pick up where the last one left off. And you just keep going like that until you have a whole class set of unique stories. One variation on this would be to give everyone the exact same sentence to start with, and then see how many directions the different stories take. Those are the low prep activities, 1 through 8. Starting with number 9, we get into the more medium prep activities. These are things that you might have to get some stuff ready ahead of time. Number 9 is improv skits. Have groups of students compete by performing improv skits. This can be done in so many ways, but 2 structures you could use are 3-word skits, where students are given 3 words and they have to come up with a skit that uses all 3 as sort of the main elements of this situation. Another idea is to create a bag of pre-written titles. You or maybe a group of students, they come up with the title, and then when the performance see it, they have to come up with a skit that actually matches that title. I got both of these ideas from a website called Drama Notebook, which is amazing. I had never seen it until I started researching for this article, but it's a whole website for people who teach drama. And they've got all kinds of really pre-created or pre-made activities for drama teachers. So if you are a drama teacher, you should go and check out Drama Notebook. You're probably going, duh, we all know about that already. But anyway, just in case. Another really good source for improv ideas is I've got a link to it in the post. It's a list of games from the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Big show, like maybe 10 years ago. It's kind of weird that it's not on anymore, but we used to love that show. And so this person has basically just compiled a list of all the games that they played on that show, the different improv games. So go and check that out if you like this idea. And just having your students get up and try to improv different kind of scenes and skits could just be a big laugh and just a lot of fun. And you're making great memories with your students. And another thing, just more of my commentary on this. I feel like sometimes with these activities, you can end up having a student realize in something like this that they actually have a talent. I mean, right now I'm just sort of picturing like a kid who, maybe in their family, they don't have a whole lot of money for activities, or their parents work late, so they can't really do after school, extracurriculars and stuff. And they never even realize that they actually have acting talent because they could never try out for the school play, or maybe in their school, there's not even funding for a school play. And you do something like an improv skit, and all of a sudden everybody in the room is just laughing hysterically at this one kid who is just completely hamming it up. This could be life-changing for them. They suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I can make people laugh. And then suddenly you have changed the entire trajectory of their lives. So there's a lot of value in doing pretty much anything besides having your kids sort of sit still and stare at a screen quietly. Okay, so that's number 9, improv skits. Number 10 is found poetry. This is a method of writing poetry where you begin with a text that's already written, like a page out of a book, like a photocopied page or something like that, or a newspaper. And then either by cutting the words from that text and creating a poem from those, or, and this second idea I like a little bit more because it's so neat, marking out everything except for a few words. Students can actually sort of uncover some pretty fantastic poetry. So if you're not familiar with this idea, you should come over to the blog post and go to number 10, and there's a link to an example of what this looks like. And once you see it, you might recognize it. But that's the kind of activity where you could just basically keep a folder of photocopied pages from all kinds of different sources, and it's just a challenge for kids to do found poetry. This would be a great like early finisher station for students who get done with things early. And even to have a group of students all do it with the exact same piece could be very interesting too, to see what different kids uncover. Okay, that was number 10, found poetry. Number 11 is icebreakers. And I actually thought I did a podcast about this, but I didn't. So I am going to just explain them to you right now. I've got 3 favorite classroom icebreakers, and I'm going to tell you about each one of them. I actually already talked to you about one called This or That. The second one is called Blobs and Lines. And here is how you play. You have students either line up in some particular order, like by birthday, or they gather into blobs based on something they have in common, like similar shoes or something like that. So they either get into a line or they get into a blob. And you, as the leader of this icebreaker, just sort of shout out, various instructions. You can have them get in alphabetical order by their first names, then get in alphabetical order by their last names, have them gather together with people who have the same eye color as you, or people who get to school the same way that you do, whether it's like all car riders or all bus riders, or if it's older kids who has their own car and who doesn't. Line up in order of how many languages you speak. Sort of the possibilities go on and on. What's so great about this is that students don't have to do anything risky or, embarrassing. They just follow the instructions and they go to the people that they have these things in common with. And it helps kids discover the things that they have in common with each other. So it's just super, lighthearted and easy. And really the only preparation you need to do is having the questions ahead of time. Although a lot of times teachers can come up with this stuff on the spot. The other game is called Concentric Circles. This is where you have students get into two circles, one on the inside and one on the outside, same number of kids. And the students on the inside face the students on the outside. And then you just start asking questions. So you could say, do you play any sports? And if so, which ones? And the students on the inside tell their facing partner their answer and vice versa. And then you have them rotate. And now they have a new partner, and you either have them answer the same question or give them a new one. And it just goes like that. And what's nice about this game is that students get to have a lot of one-on-one conversations. Everybody in the room participates, but they're only participating with one other person. So it's very low risk socially. And it forces kids to talk to other kids who they may not have ever spoken to the entire year, even though they're in the exact same class. So this is something that I typically recommend for the beginning of the year, but it would be so great as an end of the year activity too, because just because students have been in the same classroom together all year doesn't mean that they actually know each other. And you can change it up endlessly depending on how many or the kinds of questions you ask. So you can use these ideas as is, come up with your own stuff. If you want questions, I've got all 3 games actually on PowerPoints in my TPT store. It's just called Icebreakers That Rock. You can buy each game separately or you can get them as a bundle. Okay, Icebreakers is number 11. Number 12 is very simple, listen to podcasts. Now, this is kind of the auditory version of sitting and staring at a screen, but it's just a little different. If you have some extra time, you might allow students to browse through the podcast collection at ListenWise. And I actually did an interview with the CEO at ListenWise in episode 44. It was called Listen Current back then, but this is just a great website that has a collection of curated public radio podcasts. So they're really high quality. And, you might already be using something like this in the classroom for content related reasons, but there may come a time, when you want to just say to your students, I want you to just browse, find something you're interested in, listen to it, and then maybe give everybody an index card to write the name of their episode and a quick review of whether, how many stars do you give it and why, like what was great about it and what was kind of, is it worth other people's time? Really simple. So I've got a blog post also called 8 Great Educational Podcasts for Kids. That would give you another selection of podcasts that students could choose something from. Number 13 is Skype. Man, did this one send me down a rabbit hole. I already knew that there was something called Mystery Skype and I had an idea of what it was, but when I actually started researching it, holy cow, it is the coolest thing. So first of all, Skype in general offers a bunch of different ways that you can just hook your classroom up on a Skype call to, a guest speaker, an author, pretty much anybody you wanted to. But there are these 2 sort of structures now that people have come up with. And you can learn about them on the Microsoft Educator community. One of them is called a Mystery Skype. This is where you connect with another class in an unknown location. Let me say that again, an unknown location. Only you and the other teacher actually know where your classes are. And students have to work together to ask a series of yes/no questions until they guess where the other class is. So this is just really neat. It's like a geography lesson. They can ask pretty much any types of questions they want. But that looks so much fun. You just have to arrange it ahead of time. And the Microsoft Educator community sort of sets up a whole way of contacting people. So you're not just like randomly looking out in the world. They've got a system where you can find other classrooms. Another one is a virtual field trip that you can do on Skype, where you Skype with somebody who usually like a professional who is in some other part of the world. The one that I saw was done by Fabien Cousteau, who is the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, and he was doing an ocean exploration. I think it was off the coast of Florida. And he's on a device Skyping with a classroom in England and a classroom in Serbia and another classroom somewhere in the US. So these kids basically get to go under the sea with him and ask him questions and he can respond in real time, and just incredible. So again, on the Microsoft educator community, they sort of have all these virtual field trips that you can just sort of browse and kind of sign up for. I've put links to places online where you can go to sort of learn more about how it works. And Microsoft even offers, it looks like 1-hour courses that you can take for free, I believe, just to learn how to actually do it. It just looks so incredible. I am so hoping that somebody listening to this has never heard of it and is going to try it sometime over the next couple of weeks, because that just makes me super excited to think that there's a class out there that's going to get to go on one of these. Just because I found it and shared it with you. So, okay, number 13 is Skype. Number 14 is coloring books. Put on some background music, open a few bags of chips, and break out the coloring books. This is an easy, relaxing activity that sets a nice atmosphere for socializing rather than having students on their devices or zoned out in front of a screen. If you don't want to spend money on actual coloring books, you can find plenty of free printable coloring pages online. And I have linked you to a page that's got these 50 incredible, kind of like the adult coloring books, the real intricate ones, printables. You can print them out, and everybody's just got their own little 8.5 by 11 page. And I probably wouldn't do coloring books as like make everybody do it. I think if I were to have some downtime in class, and I would probably make that one of those things that is an available option. I probably would do coloring books. You could do silent reading. You could do the found poetry, like maybe have 4 or 5 different choices. Anyway, again, I have railed against coloring in general and my stuff about the Grecian urn. And let me tell you what episode that is in case you want to find it and know what the heck I'm talking about when I say Grecian urn. That's episode 54. And I'm currently getting into a little debate with art teachers right now online about it. But I do believe that if you have the choice between just telling kids, okay, you have free time, or we're going to put a movie on, or I don't know, just doing nothing, having some coloring pages available is just another way to sort of de-stress, especially if they spent the morning testing or something like that. It's just a nice sort of relaxing thing to do. Number 15 is read aloud. Reading books aloud to students is not just for the young ones. Even high school seniors can enjoy sitting back and listening to you read a good book. One of my all-time favorites is The One and Only Ivan by Katherine Applegate. If this is a story you have not read, you have to read it. Obviously there are hundreds and thousands of other choices. One of the links that I put in the post is the Global Read Aloud, which is a project that was created by Pernille Ripp, where basically everybody that signs up for the project, they all read the same book at the same time or in the same period of time. And so every year she chooses a couple of books for that year's Global Read Aloud. So they've got a list of their past books, which is a great place to start if you're looking for good read aloud books, because these have already been vetted by thousands of students and teachers. Number 16 is board games or card games. I think we can all agree that no one plays board games or card games as much as they used to. And the simple fun and social learning that can come from them are worth the time and effort. So, some good ones are Pictionary, a game called Spot It, which is really fun. Dominoes, get out some of those classic games that probably very few students actually know how to play anymore. Scattergories, Scrabble, a game called Quirkle that my family and I absolutely love, which has to do with sort of like matching tiles with different shapes and colors on them. It's, kind of a pattern game. There's always Uno, there's always Yahtzee, or even easier, just buy a few basic decks of bicycle cards and then learn with your students how to play some of the classic card games like Gin Rummy or Spades or Pinochle. I mean, these are games that are part of our literature. They're part of old movies. These are things that our kids' grandparents probably know how to play. And so again, this is another one of those life skills that why not? Why not do that instead of something else? So there's another idea right there. Number 17 is Minute to Win It games. These are just kind of little challenges. It's kind of hard to explain. They're just these fun, silly challenges. Like, I don't know how many marshmallows you can get into something. I've got a link to some examples, but really for these, they're just really fun kind of group challenges, and they usually need some supplies, so you would have to get ready. But I put a link to a post from a website called Happiness is Homemade, and these are 10 different minute to win it games that they just look like a lot of fun. So that's 17. 18 is mindfulness practice. Especially during testing season, teaching and setting aside time for mindfulness practice can ease the stress and give students a skill they can apply to so many areas of their lives. I've given you a link to 2 really good resources for getting started on this. One is a website called Mindful Schools, and another is a book called Teach, Breathe, Learn, which I actually reviewed a couple of years ago, by Meena Srinivasan. Also, 2 easy to make mindfulness tools are glitter jars. This is a jar full of, I think it's water and some kind of goo and glitter, and you sort of like tip it and the glitter, it's a little bit like a snow globe. And then something called breathing sticks, which you make with pipe cleaners and beads, and the kids sort of slide them down as they take a breath. And so if this sounds like something you'd be into, come and check out the resources that I've shared for that, because that's another really good use of time. Number 19 is Kahoot. If you still have not tried Kahoot, you are in for a treat. This website lets you create interactive game show style quizzes, and then you have students play the game on their own devices. You could create content-based Kahoots, or you could just do them for fun, and you can have students actually make them. So I've linked you to, the website and a video that shows you how it works. Number 20 is STEM challenges. A hands-on problem that students need to solve with science, technology, engineering, or math skills is cognitively challenging, socially engaging, and just a fun break from routine in any class. You could even do a STEM challenge in a language arts class. If you discuss the way the group communicated and how you problem solved, this could be a lesson in how we speak and listen to each other. So I've put a link to some fun STEM challenge ideas in the post. Number 21 is one of my favorites. I am calling this open mic. This is something I did several times in my middle school classrooms, and it was an incredibly bonding experience. Here's the idea. You invite any student who has some kind of performance talent, whether it's singing, playing an instrument, magic, martial arts, even creative writing, to take the stage in your classroom and give a short performance. Something truly magical happens when students get to see their peers step outside of the roles they're normally in during class. And if your students are anything like mine, they are going to recognize the courage it takes to get up in front of your peers and do this. Something about it matters so much more up close and personal like that. I can still remember the day when one of my 8th grade girls got up and sang an Alicia Keys song completely a cappella, beautifully. And when she was done, the room just exploded with applause. These were 8th graders. 8th graders in general are not people who are happy or cheerful or anything. They absolutely just were so supportive of her. Also, with this same idea, if you have students who are too shy to perform live or who have a talent that can't be performed in a classroom setting, let them record themselves at home and play the video in class. Maybe this is like, stunt bike stuff or skateboarding or, something like that. One of our great privileges as teachers is helping our students grow into full, well-rounded human beings. And letting them see their own peers in a different light is absolutely one of the best ways to do this. All right, the last section is the high prep or more long-term types of projects. These are a lot more involved and require a lot more planning. Number 22 is the first one here. This one is Genius Hour. Just in case you have never heard of Genius Hour, it's a structure for giving students time to explore topics and skills they choose completely on their own. Sometimes they study a foreign language, they teach themselves how to code, they even start their own businesses. A Genius Hour project usually happens over a period of weeks or even months in small increments. So if you've already got a Genius Hour program going, These extra bits of time are perfect for just having all students do more work on their projects. And if you want to learn more about Genius Hour, you will want to listen to episode 55 of this podcast, where I interview my friend AJ Giuliani, who has really done a lot of work in the Genius Hour space. And he's got a course and a webinar that teach teachers how to implement Genius Hour in their classrooms. So I've got a link to that also in the blog post. Just go to cultpedagogy.com/pod, click on episode 67. Alrighty, number 23, a community service project. One great way to make the most of the end of the school year is to have students identify a need in the community and then plan and execute a service project. I have given you a link to a page on We Are Teachers that has 7 ideas for service learning projects. Another idea that I got from the Facebook Live was that a teacher was talking about how their students organize a yard sale every year. It's a school-wide yard sale, and then they give all the proceeds to charity, which I think is a fantastic project. So something like that, something that serves the community, that would take a lot of time, and it would use a whole lot of that weird spare time that you get in all of those little pockets at the end of the year. Number 24 is a student video project. These are student created videos, and these can take all kinds of forms. They could do end of the year look back videos or book trailers, or they could do tutorials on certain things in the school or classroom. They could do PR videos for incoming students to the class or to the school. You could even hold a student film festival where the final projects are shown on the last few days of school, and they could even vote and have sort of, jury prizes, and you could do it really, really big. I've given you a link to a classroom video guide from a site called EdTech Teacher that sort of kind of goes through all the little things you need to think about when you've got students creating videos, and it's got a link to all the different apps that they can use. Just a really useful sort of overview. 25 and 26. Survivor and The Amazing Race. I have found models online of teachers that have run basically Survivor style or Amazing Race style games in their classes or even in their whole school. And so I've given you links to both of these resources. They sort of show you how they planned it and what the different parts were that they did. And these could be just sort of things that are for fun, where they have to just solve sort of regular types of challenges. Or you could put in content, or you could put in school trivia or anything in terms of what you use for the challenges. That's kind of wide open, but really fun way. But that would involve a whole lot more planning and preparation. And with a lot of these things, instead of taking it on yourselves, it's something that you could actually assign to students to plan and produce themselves, which would be a great learning opportunity all on its own. Okay, I've got 4 more. Number 27 is literature circles. Amid all of these other creative ideas, the humble literature circle may not seem quite so exciting, but never underestimate the value of a small group of students talking about a fantastic book they're all reading. And I have given you a link to a getting started guide to literature circles if you have not really done them before or just weren't really sure how to do it. It's basically just like little book clubs, but this would be a great thing to do during some of these times too. 28 is Breakout EDU. I have also heard people call it Breakout Edu. I have always thought it was Breakout EDU, but in case you don't know what this is, let me try to explain it. It's not that easy to explain. Breakout EDU is a box. It's like a kit, and it contains a few boxes, a couple of locks. It has an invisible ink pen and a UV light, a USB drive, and a few other pieces of equipment. This is a box that you can either buy from the Breakout EDU website, or they give you instructions for making your own. And here's how this box works. It's sort of like it's a kit for playing games in the classroom. These games feel like a cross between sort of a mystery and a challenge, where you have clues left around the room and students have to answer questions in order to find them. In the same way that you can plug questions or content into a platform like Kahoot, you can kind of do the same with Breakout EDU. And on their website, they also have a lot of pre-made games available that you can purchase that go with this kit. So if you want to learn more, if this sounds intriguing to you, just go to breakoutedu.com and you can learn more about it there. But that would be perfect for an afternoon after testing to just do some Breakout EDU games. Number 29 is Man, this idea is cool. A student/teacher unconference. Using a chunk of hours or even a whole day, teachers and students would plan short lessons, maybe 20 minutes each, or workshops on things they're interested in outside of school. So these could be crafts or yoga or cooking, martial arts, music, dance, technology, or pretty much anything that you could bring into the school and teach about. And then they would advertise these little mini lessons. You sort of put them up on like a Google spreadsheet the way that you would with an ed camp, and then have students and teachers sign up to attend them based on their interest. I love the idea of doing this. The idea as was presented to me was just the teachers. The teachers would just hold their own classes and the students would rotate. But I think it could be pretty neat if you had the teacher or the students actually doing some of the teaching as well. You'd have to arrange for supervision, maybe have a few kids giving their own workshops like in separate corners of the library or something. But I think it could be an interesting experiment and really introduce kids to the idea of, structures that we can put in place to give them choice. And my bet would be that the first time you did this, it would be kind of so successful, but giving it a try one year would make everybody in the building start looking forward to the next one. Start thinking of ideas for things they could present the next time around. First time is just going to be your early adopters and people who are like, what are we doing now? And they'll give it a shot. But I could see something like this, if a school really committed to it and did something like this year after year, it could become really incredible after a couple of years. The very last one, number 30, is TED Talks. This is just a real simple one. Have students watch a couple of TED Talks so that they have an idea of what that structure is, and then have them start planning and delivering their own TED Talks. And you could do this very similarly to like a student film festival or something like that, to where, they practice for a long time and maybe you videotape them and maybe have people vote or not or whatever. But for some reason, because TED Talks have gotten so popular, it's something kids really need to know about as they enter adulthood anyway. But I think it's a good question, I think, for everybody to ask. If I were to give a TED Talk, what would my main message to the world be? What would I give a TED Talk on? And that can make some interesting conversations and could make for some great student-led TED Talks. Over on my website, I have links to outside resources that can help you implement just about every idea on this list. To get those links, visit cultofpedagogy.com/pod and click on episode 67. To get weekly updates on all my newest blog posts, podcast episodes, and products, sign up for my mailing list at cultofpedagogy.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day. This podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. To learn more, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.